Um, so I guess today I'm going to be reviewing the motion picture musical Cats, and it was directed by the great Tom Hooper. Obviously, a lot has come out about this movie. That it's lost a ton of money and that it was one of the biggest Hollywood fails in a long, long time. I know people who have seen it, and the way they talk about it is something to the effect of, I didn't really get what was going on. I didn't even know that Cats was a musical. I'd never even heard of it. And if you're one of those people, then good. That means you still have, some dignity left in you. But I don't have that perspective. I have a very long history with this musical. I mean, I know it really, really, really well. And I'm not proud of it. I'm giving you some background. I saw the 1998 movie adaptation, I think when I was about 10 years old. It was like a direct video release. If you've seen the stage production, and yes, I have seen it live as well, the straight to video version is very close to that. They put on the same costumes, it's the same choreography, same makeup, the same staging and lighting for the most part. It's just that it's shot with expensive cameras going up on the stage and all of that, added special effects, things like that. It's honoring the original Broadway show. And I watched that over and over again. I mean, I'm not kidding, like dozens and dozens of times, to the point where I broke the DVD. I broke the straight to video DVD of Cats the musical. What can I say? I had a lonely childhood. But all of that does feed directly into my opinions of this film. Naturally, I couldn't help but the entire time just see memories of that original musical in my mind. But even as a kid, let me just say, as much as I worshipped it, as much as I knew every jazz hand to every high note of that fucking musical, I always knew that it wasn't that good. I always knew it wasn't a great musical by any stretch. It was never meant to have much substance. It's another one of those Andrew Lloyd Webber kind of 80s pop opera sort of vehicles that's very similar to stuff like Phantom of the Opera, and then even stuff like Les Miserables. Very melodramatic, big orchestral instrumentations and lighting. It has its place in the Broadway canon, whether you think it deserves all the popularity that it gets or not. With Cats, it is a much more quirky experience than Phantom of the Opera or something like that. It's very surreal. It's an experience where you're getting to see, like a lot of trained dancers and trained singers, theatrical performers, dress up in these kind of very interesting costumes that are cat-like, and they have makeup that kind of makes them appear like a cat, and they're reciting lyrics that are original T.S. Eliot poems. I never watched it for the plot. I never cared who goes to the Heaviside Layer, because really, I don't even think it's really rebirth. I think you just get sacrificed. I'm just looking at it as, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a dancer, I wanted to be a singer, I wanted to be a performer. And that's all this is. It's just that from beginning to end. There's no dialogue. There's nothing like that. And it had a feeling to me of like a Ziegfeld Follies. Something where you're just getting to see musical number after musical number, and each person that drives that musical number is showing their talent, showing what they can do. It's movies from like the 1930s through the 1950s. There was a lot of that happening. Movies like Ziegfeld Follies, which came out in 1945, and then things like Words and Music. These are very old musicals and not even necessarily classics, but they didn't give a shit about the plot. Sometimes there was no plot to speak of. It's just different musical numbers, one by Fred Astaire, one by Judy Garland, one by Gene Kelly. It's meant to showcase talent and not necessarily any sort of cohesive story or anything like that. And, that's what it is. You don't take it that seriously. And with Cats, it really depends on the talent, because it has such a thin conceit. So you're really depending on the dancing and the singing, and especially the music and the staging. Because believe it or not, whether you like the musical or not on stage, it does work to an extent. But on screen, as a movie experience like this, a cinematic experience, it does not work. Even when I was a kid, I would think, I wonder if one day they're gonna make like a really expensive Cats musical. But I always thought if they did, that would just be so stupid. Then, when they announced this movie, I had the same opinion. And then I saw the cast and I thought, holy shit, this is gonna be real bad. Not just bad, but real bad. Jason Derulo, I didn't think anyone knew who he was past like the year 2013. And speaking of Jason Derulo, I did watch a TMZ clip of him for research purposes, where someone was like, the paparazzi was making fun of cats, and he turns around and he gets like really offended, and he's like, you know, this movie is like, it's like a deportation to another dimension. And I know what he meant. I know that he meant it to be a good thing, but no, that is the perfect, unintentionally, that is the perfect review of this movie. A deportation to another dimension. This movie is, it is fascinating. It is truly an epic fail. It is an epic fail in every way that people have said. Like, if this is the mark right here, they keep just missing the mark over and over and over, in big ways, in small ways. I have rarely in my life seen like such a star-studded movie that has legends like Ian McKellen and Judi Dench, and then it has like principal ballet dancers from some of the great ballet companies in the world, alumni like Robbie Fairchild. I've seen him perform live, and Francisca Hayward. And you've got the choreographer here is the same choreographer as Hamilton, I believe. So it's like you've got a lot of ingredients here that say that this could possibly be okay, and yet it just completely implodes in front of your eyes. It's a bad movie. Like, it's real bad, but it's not offensive. It's not, you know, it's not one of those movies where I sit there and I watch it and it makes me feel like I hate the world and I hate people and I'm just upset about everything. It's not like that. It's more fascinating than anything else. You're marveling at the chaos and you're getting a sick thrill out of how much of a failure it is and how much it does not translate to the cinematic experience. That's really what's so fascinating about it. And also just how much money went into that idea. I'm just trying to understand the thought process of the filmmakers here. It's like, how aware were the filmmakers of what was going on here? Were they really thinking that, no, you know, this could be the perfect musical to kind of offset the people that want to see Rise of Skywalker over the Christmas holiday? Or were they really going for this, no, this is going to really freak people out and we want to go for that cult status, it's trippy, so bad it's good sort of thing, make people uncomfortable? Tom Hooper is the director, as I said earlier, and it makes me feel like they were wanting to go for quality, just because obviously Tom Hooper has accolades and he has Academy Awards under his belt. I do not like Tom Hooper. I have never been a fan of Tom Hooper, but I mean, I can't deny that he did make, you know, The King's Speech, which was quite successful critically, and it got a lot of accolades. Now, of course, that movie is a very, like, stylistically, it's very arty and kind of experimental, especially in its shot compositions. There's a lot of kind of fisheye distorted lenses, which I really don't like all of that. And I've never liked Tom Hooper's, just his point of view, his aesthetic. All of those kind of flourishy, arty sorts of things that he's doing there, those techniques, they don't mean anything. They don't express anything thematically that the film is going for. And so it just feels very disjointed and, just flourishy. He made Les Miserables, which I hated. I hated that movie. Like, you should have seen the expression on my face when it was over. But, you know, he received a lot of criticism for that, and just the sense that he did a lot of kind of handheld shaky cameras, a lot of extreme close-ups and very long takes, which, you know, he's going for this like pure viscera, this forced pathos to nauseating levels. He's never allowing for any nuance or any spatial coherence or any dimension in the imagery or anything like that. So I knew when I saw this, I mean, I thought he was a terrible choice to make this movie. He's learned, I think, from Les Miserables, and he's not making those same mistakes here, but this is different because there's a lot of dancing going on here, and there's a lot of movement, and there's a lot of blocking. Blocking is very crucial to just this kind of musical. He has no instinct for spacing or the flow of movement, and he doesn't know how to make this world, or any world really, truly pop aesthetically. And this movie is really, really ugly, just ugly looking. The staging of everything is real muddled, very murky and dark, and it flattens the spaces rather than bringing them to life as it should. Nothing feels alive, there's no pizzazz. This is a musical that's full of cats that are very distinct, and they each have their own musical number that is devoted to them. In the original musical and in the film version, the 1998 version, I feel like you really get a chance to let them breathe and really do what they do. You get a good sense of who they are, their personality, and each number is quite distinctly different from the other. But this one, it all just felt bleh, like vomit, like it was all together. Nothing really stood out. Everything felt very, very rushed. Nothing felt personal or tangible. He, like I said, Hooper just has no idea how to capture the physicality of movement, of dancing. And when you have a musical full of dancing, you kind of need that from a director. He cannot understand kind of the accents of the body and the shapes you can make or anything like that in a compelling way. Though I will say, few do nowadays, in my opinion. I think that's something that people in the old days just did better. In dancing, as it is, it's supposed to be this abstract representations of the emotions and the themes of the story or whatever it is that you're going for. And yet you never get a sense of any sort of physicality in this movie. There are a lot of reasons for that, I think. Part of it is the music itself and the people singing it. It's just, it's bad. It's like the visuals. It's very flattened. None of the instruments really accentuate the strengths of the melodies in any sort of way. Part of it is the dance choreography as well, which has been completely changed as well, just like the instrumentation. It has a more kind of artistic, more experimental style. Like I said, it's the dance choreographer for Hamilton, kind of, and he is creating very interesting shapes, I would say, just as a choreographer himself, kind of a sort of feeling we have a lot of dancers together and they're sort of rippling, like they're creating one nucleus sort of thing, which in theory it is very cool, but I don't think that it works here, that more kind of high artistic style for Cats. I think you need to have movement that has more of that theatrical flair, go more for the Vegas in this instance, I think, because you need more of that light and shade. Like the original choreography and in the original show, there's a lot of really big climactic moments in the music and in the dancing that are memorable. You remember them. In the original movie, like there's this big climactic moment with the music and the lights just go like the colors and you see the shadows and all the dancers just kind of do this like lunge move. Very simple, but that effect, the shapes of it with the music, as simple as it is very effective. It's satisfying to watch. And there are many satisfying moments like that to watch visually, I think. Reach Number is building in a certain way with a certain interpretation, whereas here it all just kind of, ran together and felt the same. And a huge reason why this movie didn't work and why a lot of people have said this is the horrifying special effects. The digital cat technology is, it's deeply disturbing. The way that it looks, like, because obviously they're, like I said, they're doing like this weird hybrid of being a cat and a human sort of thing, but the body shapes, none of it really matches up. Like it's always kind of morphing and changing. Like one ear will be bigger than the other, and like it's just. It's just bad. And the resolution isn't good. Like from background to foreground, it's like all this money. And I don't mean this is just like you notice it every once in a while. Like, that. No, it's like every single frame. You're just like, And that technology and the way that it looks completely ruins any chance for any real physicality to be defined. They have hired real principal ballet dancers, and yet you never get to see any of their talent truly. Especially Hayward, when she's doing this sort of pas de deux sort of thing, and like her body is just not matching with the cat body, and it's just so distracting. And you feel bad because it's like while you're watching, you get a sense that these people, these dancers and these performers, like they worked hard on it and they probably didn't know. It's one of those movies where, I can see how you really had no idea what this was going to become. And when you realize, you're like, oh God, I better call my agent and publicist. I would actually like to see this movie again, just all done on the motion capture stage with none of the special effects or any of that shit in it at all. Just the dancers, the performers in their motion capture suits, as though this is like that scene in Holy Motors. There would be so much more artistry to be found, I feel like. And I also think there's something to the immediacy of the staging and the performance. That's what makes Cats popular. As much as it is really, even for theater nerds, it is a guilty pleasure sort of thing. I mean, that's what it's there for, so that you can really see the work that goes into it. And I think that, you know, like that's why a lot of those old musicals worked, is because it had a stage quality to it. And even with this, it's like they spent all this money on this digital whatever. And it's like, why don't you just have the actors wear a costume and do the makeup like they do on stage? Because it looks very cool if you look it up. That would work, because it worked in the original movie, because it felt like a real production. The singing is real bad in this, as I said. Even when it comes to people like Jennifer Hudson, who obviously, like, of course she can sing, of course she can, but she has a very specific style of voice that does not work for Cats at all. And I know what they're going for. They're trying to have that big gut-wrenching moment like she had in Dreamgirls. But her voice, yeah, it worked for that, because that's more gospel inspired, soulful, she's a powerhouse performer, but there isn't much nuance in her performance. It was a very kind of weepy, she's overly emoting all this stuff in this classic number that is Memory. And to me, what makes Memory strong, just as a performance, actually comes from the restraint in the performer, the restraint in the voice. You need somebody who has a really great theatrical experience and a very, very good singer. The emotion and everything comes from the melody. It comes from the song. It comes from the instrumentation. It's not just like what Jennifer Hudson is doing. It feels more like she's just taking the viscera and trying to throw it in your face, instead of leaving it to the song to do all of that. Even though there's really not a plot, they're still trying for one. And of course, again, completely missing the mark. You feel like if you're gonna do that, you know, why would you make McCavity the main antagonist? Like, I mean, I kind of get that it makes sense, but he's not really that important to anything. If you're gonna build a plot, shouldn't it be more about like Grisabella? Because she's really the only one who has a real arc of any sort. I get having Victoria be the kind of naive person that the audience can kind of follow and project themselves onto. I get that, but I feel like Grisabella, it makes much more sense to focus on, but they spent so little time with Grisabella that by the time she sings her big song and she's the chosen one, nobody cares and no one's built any sort of empathy or anything like that with her character. But yeah, I don't know. It seems natural to me. They could even use Munkustrap and make him a bigger part of it, because really he is supposed to be the leader of this tribe of cats, though I don't know how clear that was in the movie. I watched this with one of my good friends who has no experience with cats and all of that. He had no idea what was going on. I'm like, yeah, you know, I understand where you're coming from. Ugh, fuck this movie. Fuck this movie. But if you find this kind of stuff interesting, which I do, seeing all this money and all this like production, you know, whatever, all this hype go into something and seeing how it just didn't come together is truly fascinating. There are always those big failures at the box office that we always remember because it was a failure and not because of any of the content. And that's how this film is going to be remembered. It's really fascinating to go online, really, and watch the way the actors are trying to sell it at the press junkets before the hype got out, and then how much they changed afterward. Hollywood is a fascinating place. So yes, of course, I do not recommend this movie. I don't really recommend Cats at all. It's one of those guilty pleasures I grew up with as a kid. It should remain how it is. It should remain as on stage. It should remain as that 1998 movie. They should have never done this, but they did, and now they're paying a big price. So yeah, that is my review. Thank you all for listening. All of my social media information is below. You can watch more videos here, and you can subscribe if you want to. Catch you next time.